Tobian sent me a book that was last year, and I read through and of her experience. Honestly, I like the fact that you were so sincere. The evidence that she provided in the book, I was like, if it were me, I would have hidden some of it. But I like your sincerity and your openness of how what you are going through in Germany. Sometimes through your pain, you also bring healing to others. So I applaud you for
Exactly.
the fact that you didn't ignore the opportunity to help others, but you embraced it. And hello guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's segment, we are going to have an interview of a lady called Tobian. I'll let her introduce herself. So she's been in Germany. She came from Liberia to Germany, and we are here to discuss what she's been through, why she moved from Liberia to Germany, her experience, financial, stalking, surprising experiences she has experienced in Germany. So, without saying much, I would like Tobian to introduce herself so that we'll start the interview.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Esther. I came across your video when you also talked about Germany, and I was able to reach out to you, to me. So my name is Tobian Estella Nelson. I am originally from Liberia. I live in Germany with my two daughters since 2017. I came as a student and decided to stay due to some personal reasons that I'm not going to go into. But I decided to stay and integrate because on papers there are that's a very good laws and how easy it is for you to integrate as a foreigner, because Germany presents itself as a immigration friendly country. So I decided to stay with my children, especially since they were in school and there were other things happening in my life at the time that I thought it was best to remain here for their sake. And so in terms of maybe other things that I may want to say about myself is that I studied my master's in public policy. I also worked in the nonprofit sector here in Germany and back home in Liberia. Here in Germany, my work in the nonprofit sector was mostly volunteerism. And then I also started freelancing and was able to win some grants and continue my work. Volunteerism doesn't pay bills, so I had to find other ways to get employment since I couldn't get one through the traditional, route that people take to get employment. Yeah, so I don't know if they answer your questions. In terms of,
So we'll dive into all these issues, but Tobian sent me a book that was last year, and I read through of her experience. Honestly, I like the fact that you were so sincere. The evidence that she provided in the book, I was like, if it were me, I would have hidden some of it. But I like your sincerity and your openness of how what you are going through in Germany, But you also said that you came from Liberia. I want us to discuss what were you doing in Liberia? What motivated you to come to Germany in the first place? So, yeah.
Yeah, so back in Liberia, like I said, I worked in I started a small nonprofit organization. Someone gave me 300 US when I wanted to go into nonprofit work, because before then, before starting the nonprofit, I was a reporter for one of the local newspapers. But I was very frustrated. I was not happy in the newsroom simply because, you wrote stories, but then you didn't see any follow-up actions. People have real needs, and I thought writing was not enough. So that drove me into nonprofit work. And we were able to grow the organization from a bedroom. That was where I held the first meeting, from a bedroom to an organization that employed like over 30 people, including some. We also launched the first women's radio station in my country. So it was doing well. We built our own office, our headquarters, somewhere on the outskirts of Monrovia. So it was a successful nonprofit organization, not just in terms of our operations and what we were doing internally, but also the people we were working with, were seeing impacts. And then the feedback we got from our beneficiaries was the motivation to really keep us going, that the work we were doing was very important. Sexual violence, and, it's a big
Yeah.
problem still in Liberia. And
Okay.
one of the things that we were fighting against.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you what the NGO was about. You said it was the first female radio station. So what did you concentrate on?
I didn't even mention the name. Yeah, I think somewhere in my mind, I kind of turned off to certain things back home. Yeah, but the organization was called, on paper it exists, so I would say it's called the Liberia Women Media Action Committee. And we established ourselves mainly to fight off inequalities and gender-based violence. During the war and after, sexual violence was very widespread, and there was not enough media attention, to the problem. So we thought that we could fill that gap, not only because we were women, but because there was a need and we had the tools, we had the skills. So I was able to get 5 other women initially, to buy into the idea, and with the help of friends in the UN, we were able to get the push that we needed to at least launch. And it was an interesting journey in itself, but in the end, we're able to build something that was really thriving, something that was making serious impact in the country.
Yeah. So how did you get in touch with the UN to support you?
Well, as a reporter, doors open to you. Yeah. So say I went to a training. The friend in the UN that I'm talking about, I went to a training, and it was a health reporter training, and the one of the facilitators there, I think he just kind of liked me for. Professionally, but I think he just kind of liked me, and he saw some potentials there as well. Besides, I was elected secretary for the group, so I also had to kind of interface with him a number of times. And he was visiting Liberia one day after the war broke out, and he asked me, "What are you doing about, the violence, the scale of violence against women?" And I said, the newspaper is closed. I can't report. I am interested in doing something about women. I have also dealt with abusive relationship. I've been through that. So I was just rumbling, telling him how much I wanted to do this and do that. And he kind of guided me from that point to say, yes, you can do something. And that was the beginning of the journey. I didn't know where it was taking me, but I just wanted to try and see if we could bring attention to the issue. So in fact we started with our first project was a newsletter, and he gave the first $300 US. We were going to refugee camps, talking to women there about their experiences, not just with health volunteer workers, the humanitarian workers that were offering food, because sex for food was an issue. But then rebels were also going on refugee camps and sexually violating women. One story we came across was a young lady who was abandoned by her husband because she was abused sexually by the rebels. And she was pregnant she was pregnant with their child, and she was abused by the rebels, and he abandoned her, and we had to intervene. And it was a successful story, because we were able to help the husband see that it was not her decision, that she was violated, and him neglecting her was the worst thing that he could do. And I think it was just maybe that ego thing, and then he himself dealing with the trauma because he was also manhandled by the rebels. So he
Okay.
himself had some healing to do. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
he himself had some healing to do. But it was a very common thing. It's a very common thing, very horrible, where you will find a woman being forced to sleep with her
Yeah.
son,
Wow.
because the
Easy.
rebels said, yeah, because the rebels said so. And there was another story of a girl. She was 9 or 8 years old, and she was sexually abused by rebels, and she died right on the spot.
Mm.
So a lot of terrible things happened. So that just kind of, for me, it was a passion
Yeah.
to address that problem, because I was also sexually abused as a child. It
Mm.
was not during the war; it was before the war. But I already had that trauma,
Yeah.
and I didn't have a voice. I didn't have any understanding. I didn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I started, addressing it, I just knew it was something that I had to deal with, without understanding why and what was happening to me, as a woman myself. But it was an interesting journey. I know. Sorry, I go over the place sometimes.
No, don't
So
worry. It's very emotional because you see people going through what you also went through, and you want to help them in any way that you can. So sometimes through your pain, you also bring healing to others. So I applaud you for
exactly.
the fact that you didn't ignore the opportunity to help others, but you embraced it and you went ahead with it. Yes. So right now, is it still common? Are the rebels still intimidating women in Liberia?
Well, the war is over, and there was this, program for, rehabilitation and integration of people who fought in the war. So that part of the conflict was addressed. But I think psychosocial healing and other, I don't know if you hear noise in the background, like upstairs, there's the drilling that I mentioned in my book is still happening. The only good thing is that my bathroom has not leaked. So that's really good news for me. But as I was saying, the war ended, so and we have had the third successful, political, democratically free elections. So we're still on the journey to recovery because the country is still fragile in terms of economic growth and all of that.
Yeah. Okay. So after establishing this radio station, why did you come to Germany? Why didn't you stay in
Yeah.
Liberia and pursue this passion of yours?
Okay, so the organization started in 2003, and it really did not take off until 2005 when I decided to do it full time.
Okay.
And I continued to work most of the time without, any kind of break. I mean, like you carry over 90% of the responsibilities of the organization, so it was very overwhelming at one point
Mm-hmm.
when I felt I needed to take a break and step away from everything that I was doing. I had done it for like 14 years by then.
Wow.
So I was exhausted.
Yeah.
I was exhausted. I needed a break. I kept going. Then I also needed to grow because the organization had grown larger than myself in terms of capacity, experience, and exposure. One of the things I know I needed to really or the areas I needed to improve myself in was executive leadership. But then also I thought it was time for me to pursue something different,
Mm-hmm.
not different in terms of social work or the kind of work I was doing, but in terms of the role I was playing in the organization at the time. I felt that, taking it from the infancy all the way to it, having the first radio station, having its own permanent office on 1 acre property, I have already achieved, a significant milestone, as a leader, and it was time for a new breed of leadership to step in and take over. and I was just going to be a fundraiser, get more into politics, like kind of in the mainstream of politics a little bit. So that was my thinking. And to step away from that, I felt I needed a different environment as well. So when I saw the opportunity to study abroad, I decided to, take advantage. And for some reason, I came to Germany. There were several other countries I could have gone to, including the US. Was intentional about not going to the US because I didn't want distraction. Yeah, I didn't want to go to the US because there are many Liberians, and I had gone to the US, I think maybe 5 or 7 times before the opportunity came. So I know what it's like, and they just the possibilities of me, getting distracted or people expecting me to do certain things. I'm not able to do that. And I just wanted a time for me to be away to reflect. Yeah, I just wanted some time to be able to reflect about my life, reflect on my goals for the future. So that was why I chose Germany. The second reason was that my late mother, she has a brother, but we don't have any relationship. But I'm just saying it was a motivation at the time when I decided to come to Germany because he came in the 60s and that was before I was born, and I've never seen him. He has never been back. So I thought, from the stories I heard about, like the relationship with my mom, and just how a loving man, I mean, he is. That it would be good to come and meet him in person.
Yeah.
So that was the second reason, but that is a totally different story about itself.
Yes. So after you decided to come to Germany, and what was your first experience when you landed Deutschland? What was it like?
Well, yeah. I mean, we came to it was a beautiful experience in the beginning. I mean, everyone looked friendly, everyone going by their business, normal businesses. We were helped when we needed to find information about where to go next to be able to, come over to Erfurt, where we live now, and where the university is that I attended. So it was bright. It was, coming and then hoping to get the best experience. Apart from the fact that we were tired and we had a very long journey from Liberia, we had to stop over in Accra for a little over a month, waiting for our visas.
Yeah.
Then, then before making the journey over here. So just that long wait. Other than that, everything seemed normal. Everything, because I had traveled many times before. So for me, it was not new. And I didn't expect anything other than what we got, like seeking information and getting people being and people being kind enough to direct you where you needed to go.
Yeah.
Except when we came to the university. When we came to the university, that was a different experience. Yeah. It was a different experience because just the journey. In fact, when we I don't know if I even mentioned that in the book, but when we came, our suitcases, we had one that was so very heavy and we could not, I couldn't take it off the train because we had to take the train. We couldn't get a flight to come straight to Erfurt. So we had to take the train from Frankfurt. And there was a gentleman and his, I thought maybe girlfriend's sister, but he was with a woman, and they were kind to help us, take our stuff off the train to put it down on the platform. Yeah, they were very, very kind. So we got assistance from people, and I didn't have any worries about life yet because I wasn't expecting much apart from it's a beautiful place, the landscape very beautiful. Yeah, and then getting to the university and knowing what it's like, to live as a student was totally new to me.
Interesting.
Yeah, in terms of just the bed, the furniture, and everything looks so plain. And then the
Yeah.
place was not washed, the walls were not
Mhm.
painted, So, and then they had baby beds for my kids. It was just chaotic in the beginning, but we're able to settle in eventually. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know whether it's in the book or you told me, because I remember you saying that the person who showed you the apartment showed it in a different light. You were expecting something different. So when you
Oh yeah.
arrived,
So
yeah, so can you share more
yes.
information on that?
Yeah, yeah. No, but the thing is, you get catalogs of places you can live when you are outside. So
Mm-hmm.
you only see the exterior of the property or the facility. You don't see the
The
inside,
interior. Okay.
And then when you hear furnished or partly furnished, you think the African idea of what furnished and partly furnished means, because back home, when
Yeah.
you have a partly furnished apartment, it is really decent. It's like an Airbnb with very good furniture. So I mean furniture. So I didn't anticipate coming to see the kind of furniture that I met, cable ready, and it's a student living place. So I was just very ignorant. That's just the short of it. I was just very ignorant.
Yeah. But how many children? How many were your children? How many are your children?
Yeah, so I came with two. I have three, but I came with the two youngest.
Mm. Okay.
And at the time, one was 11 and one was 9. So I don't know why whoever handled the arrangement in my apartment thought they needed baby beds.
So I read your book and I saw that you shared your daughter's experience. You said when your daughter started the German school, she experienced racism. Can you share more light on what you wrote about this?
Well, not just one, both of them. The thing is with the system here, which I didn't know and didn't properly educate myself, is that when you send your child to the public school, the government decides where to go depending on where you live. So that was new. And when we came, they did not immediately start school, so they were home. It was a boring time for them. They wanted to be in school. It took a little while, but finally they got in school.
For how long did they have to
I
wait?
think because we came in October, and by late November or early December was when they started school. Not so long, but for kids, and they were eager to start school. So for them, it was long. And then I had already started school in October. No, I think the first or second week of October, and they were still home. So it was a little hard for them. And then the apartment, the way it was, not much for them to do. But anyway, so talking about racism, so it started with the youngest, as far as I can remember. She had gone to school. I think it was the second week, and she was so excited to use her natural hair, and so we got it done. She went to school, and not long after, no, I think the afternoon, but before her school could close, she got on the phone and she was crying, and I didn't know what happened, but she was like, I needed to go and get her right away. And when I got there, she was so like she was so downhearted, down spirited. She looked broken. She looked broken, and when she finally was able to tell me that the kids in school had been mocking her because of her hair, they felt that her hair, whatever was wrong with it, I don't know, but to them, it was not good enough. It was not nice enough. It was not humor enough. So they used that to taunt her. And the other thing too, she had already started struggling, which I didn't know, and stopped speaking in school because of her accent.
Ah,
You know, because she I mean, we're Africans. We have our own, kind of accent, and I do speak with an accent, and for her, coming as an African child, newly arriving in Germany, when I know how to speak German,
mm-hmm.
and she didn't know how to deal with that. She was the only black child in her school at the time. I don't know
Okay.
whether she was the only foreigner, but she was the only black child in her class, rather. At the time, as far as I know, she was the only black child. Yeah, so I think sitting among children you don't know,
Yeah.
and whenever you try to speak, the only thing is laughter. I don't know whether the teacher was able to deal with that, but that really shut her down completely. On even when she became a teenager, transferred to a different school, to get her to speak in class was war. It just like very recently that she kind of loosened up. When she's out, she speaks. When she's home, she speaks. She's very intelligent, very eloquent, but because of that experience from the time she came, it just kind of shut her down. That
Yeah.
she will go other places and speak, but when she's in the classroom, she doesn't want to speak. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm happy she's been able to recover.
And her sister, yeah, and her sister was also, bullied, and to the point where we had to organize a workshop. So when I was volunteering doing my internship, and she told me about the problem, I was just like, okay, I think one of the things I can do here that I know to do is advocacy. So we were able to organize a workshop.
That's good.
She had a Russian teacher who was very cooperative and understood when I told her, I didn't like what my child was going through.
Mm,
She was also the only black in the entire school. There were other foreigners, but she was the only black.
yeah.
And sometimes when she's walking, people will make monkey noises and ask her whether she slept in trees, whether there were
Wow.
cars, where she came from. And I, like, how did you even know how to use a computer? Those kinds of things,
Yeah.
and then, like I mentioned in the book, and I don't want to say exactly what happened, but it was very disgusting. One time she was coming home, a group of boys, that was walking, and one of them did something to her on the streets, and she came home. She didn't even speak, ran straight into the bathroom. And when she finally got to tell me about what happened, and I was angry, but we didn't know who they were. We didn't know how to find them, But
Yeah.
they really dealt with some things. In fact, there was a time she said, like, even in the bathroom, because there's another girl who's a foreigner and Muslim that she's friends with, and they were sometimes, bullied by other girls in the bathroom, when they went to use the bathroom. So they really had their own share. And one time I went to my daughter's event, and a group of boys started throwing stones at me. Yeah, when we came initially, yeah.
When I was reading the book, I don't know, I jotted that we are in this 21st century. Is it that they don't know that even though we are blacks, we still have buildings we live in? Can they Google to see that we are advanced? So is it that they are not intelligent enough to know that we are not, we don't live in trees, or they think we are monkeys? It doesn't make sense. Or maybe sometimes they know it, but they just want to undermine you. They just want you to feel like you are not in their level. So that was two things that was conflicting. Do they know and they are intentionally mocking you, or they have no idea and they think that is
I really cannot answer. I really cannot answer. And
yeah.
but sometimes it has to do with the image people, uh, people get to see over and over, like the image and perspective that maybe whether it's the Western media,
Yeah,
portrayal of Africa, or
exactly.
the just that image that Africa is a dirt poor continent and the people there are not so intelligent. Sometimes that's the kind of image you see, from the way Africa is portrayed, by the West. So perhaps, the
Yeah.
people who live in the West, having been outside in their own bubbles,
Mhm.
believe what they are told and what they see on television.
Watch out for part 2. This interview is about Tovian's book that she wrote of her experience, why she came to Germany, her experiences in Germany, the obstacles she has faced, financial obstacles, the immigration issues she has faced, even courts. She had issues in the courts and she was able to fight for her own case. So the book will be linked to her Facebook and I would also put it in the description box. And it's actually free. And but I want to encourage us to donate the little that we have to support her and to show appreciation for her sharing her knowledge and her experience of living in Germany. And don't forget, people who are amazing help others to be amazing. Thank you.